Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Blancato. I'm CEO and President of Latimer Thalmann Asset Management, Chief Market Strategist for Rose. Welcome to another weekly market impact. Wow, today's already the 6th. Time flies. Actually, my anniversary today. Got to remember, wish my wife a happy anniversary. 24 years married, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, hopefully you're doing fine. Lots to just me today. I know we've had a lot of guests on recently, and I'm going to have a lot on this year. I got a lot of guests I want to bring on and keep it interesting. I think you all get tired of hearing from me sometimes. I mean, me yapping away for half hour or so can be a little bit boring, but I try to mix it up. But today, post Easter, it's just me. Now, today in Italy, it's actually a holiday. The Monday after Easter is called Pasquetta, or the Little Easter. And the reason why it's the Little Easter is because this is very much where yesterday's a church day. Go to church and have dinner with your family. Today, the individual family, just the mom and dad and the kids, they'll just go do something on their own usually. And it's like kind of a micro event. They'll go out to the farms and they'll do a picnic, the countryside, visit the local markets, and just do a very relaxing, sort of non-obligatory day. It's very, very popular in Europe, very popular here. A lot of folks eat their leftovers from the prior day. So it's a very popular thing. United States, no, we're all business here because everyone goes full tilt all the time. So unfortunately, that's the way it goes. I just feel like I got a stain on my shirt. What did I do? Oh well, sorry, forgive me. I wear this pullover a lot. It's one of my favorites. It fits me. I have arms like an orangutan. I'm built like an orangutan. I'm 6'6" this way and 6'4" this way. So things with long sleeves are like my favorite thing in the world, and slim because I'm not a broad person. But anyway, why I'm telling you this, I have no idea. Anyway, I hope you had a wonderful Easter. Easter, for those who celebrate it, it's a special time of the year. For those who celebrate Passover, hopefully you had a wonderful Passover. It's a chance to reflect. I actually went to church on Saturday night, and we had a really cool Saturday night mass. The first hour was just candlelit to reflect on the book of Genesis and when the world began, and all the way up to the birth of Christ, and then a traditional mass after that. Not trying to pour my religion all over you. Forgive me. I'm just saying it was a very peaceful moment, a way to kind of reflect and meditate. And at a time when the world can be a little bit upside down on certain things, it's give you credit. I was just listening to the president a few minutes ago about how the U.S. military went in and rescued the downed pilots. It sounded like an amazing mission to be able to rescue some people who are in harm's way, and not advocating for the war, not getting into any of that. It's not my point. My point is there are heroes still in the world. And at a time when you see all this crazy stuff happening out there, it's nice to be able to kind of reflect and meditate just for a few minutes, just to realize that we're a little thing in this gigantic history of ours. And sometimes it's a good idea to just check yourself. And I think this time of year is good at that. I've lost a lot of people somehow around this time of year. It seems like early spring into spring is when most of the family members I care a lot about passed away. My mom, my dad, grandparents. I remember my grandfather passing away just the day before Easter. It's a tough time in that you reflect on people that you love and miss. And certainly Easter can do that for the obvious reasons for those who celebrate it. But at the same token, it's the watching the world come to life has always been fascinating to me. In New Jersey, we're famous for our cherry blossom trees, and it's like in DC, but we also have them up here. We don't get the same level of credit as DC does, and they are very beautiful down there. But we have rows of them, and many of the houses in the streets. The high school here in Nutley, four gigantic cherry blossom trees. I mean, huge. These things are 450 feet high, surrounded by smaller ones. And the big ones are white, the little ones are pink. And watching them come to life this time of year, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So hopefully you had a wonderful time with friends and family. Hopefully you celebrated something, everything or nothing. I don't know, whatever works for you. But for me, it was a wonderful celebration. I make my father's Sicilian style lamb, which is interesting. Is it's not traditional. You slow cook it in an oven with a mixture of wine and rosemary, garlic, black pepper, bay leaf, parsley. And you slow cook it that immersed in wine after you've marinated for a couple of days. Cook it for about 3 hours at a low heat, and it falls off the bone. It's delicious. It's a unique way to eat it. It's this old tradition we've been doing forever. So traditions reunited. Spent time with my sister and my brother. My daughter's down at school. Both did things with their friends. I'm almost tempted to go down for this one, but we passed last minute. A couple of fun things about the weekend. Kudos to the UCLA women's basketball team. I watched a little bit of that final game last night. Boy, those girls rolled. Wow. The UConn men keep it on in basketball. Those guys, Danny Hurley, my gosh, Jersey kid, gone coach, and he's a bit of a character, but he's produced one hell of a basketball team. Even though I think they got lucky the last time, the Duke should have beat them, but that's okay. And how about those New York Yankees? Oh, 7-2, I think we are. Best ERA in baseball, whatever. It's nice to start the year off on a winning foot. Sorry for my non-Yankee fans. But on a personal note, I always say this: economics is drives everything in life. And if you think about it, why is Italy terrible at soccer anymore? Because Italian economics are terrible. You know, Italy's a very expensive place to live. You don't make a lot of money. They don't have any babies anymore. Their population's shrinking. And what's the result of it? The Italian national team is once again eliminated from the World Cup. That is 3 World Cups in a row we haven't been in. That's amazing. That's 16 years. Really, it's going to be 20 years before we have a chance to step on the turf again. Because you got to buffer it with the 4 years on each side before the next World Cup comes. So I'm usually all excited about the World Cup. I was a translator for the Italian national team, translated for many of the big clubs when they came here growing up. And this year, I'm not too excited about even going. Yeah, I won't get to see a U.S. game unless they make the final, which, listen, everybody, I'm a pro-American guy. There's not a chance in heck that the United States is even going to get close to the final. I don't even think they make it out of the first round. We don't have the talent here for soccer. I don't know why. I guess kids play other sports. The best athletes go somewhere else. If we make it out of the first round, I'd be shocked. Anyway, if by some chance they make it to the final, it's here in New Jersey. I don't think I'll go. It's a lot of money, but who knows? Don't hold me to that. Anyway, the Italian national team, not in it. That's the one down note about sports right now. Sadly, and it comes back to economics. No babies, no soccer players. It's just that simple. On the markets, we wrapped up the first quarter. And why that's so important is we tend to measure everything by quarters. Last year for us as a money manager, we had a good year, not a great year. There's years when we've been exceptional. I'd say last year was solidly average. And it's part of our belief in small caps. So small caps didn't beat the S&P last year, but boy, are they beating the heck out of them this year. When you look at how the quarter closed for stocks, the S&P 500 down 3.53%, the Dow down 2.83%. I'll come back to that. The Russell 1000 growth, or the big, call it, those Mag 7 names, down anywhere from 9 to 13%. So the 1000 growth was down 9%, but the Mag 7 down over 13%. They're expensive. We've talked a lot about it, and there's more stocks in the market than just the Mag 7. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about, that, there are other places to invest. When you look at international stocks, still doing well. IFA, International Developed Europe, up 2.88. Emerging markets, surprisingly. The manufacturers of the world, up 3.17. And you know what hung in there quite well? Finally, we saw small caps resurge. And when you look at I actually got those numbers wrong. Emerging markets of 3.07. International developed of 1.73, forgive me. And then finally, when you look at the small cap stocks, up 2.26%. So really a strong number. Those are, I'm giving you year-to-date numbers. They weren't just a quarter. I'm giving you actually on the as of the 6th, as of Friday's close, so a couple extra days in there. And the reason why I mention all this is because being diversified right now has made a significant difference. The biggest stocks, those mega growth names, are down, like I said, 9 to 13%. And the smallest stocks, the Russell 2000, up 2.26. And I saw this interesting piece about how a 60/40 portfolio got kind of walloped in the last month of the year. It's true that a 60/40 portfolio had a pretty rough month that last month of the year. When you look at 60/40 portfolio, the month of March, down 2.6%. And then the knock was giving it a bit of a knock. But you know what the bond market is on the year? Flat. Well, I'll take flat versus the S&P down 3.53%, or the mega stocks down 13. So in other words, when I look at what's happening, I'd say a balance account did quite well. In fact, most of our balance accounts were just down a little bit for the quarter because of small caps, because the bond market being flat, and depending on what you owned, could have even been up a little bit. So even though it had a pretty rough March, when interest rates go higher, everything suffers. The idea of inflation and interest rates, both stocks and bonds went down in the month of March. In fact, when you look at some of the data around the month of March, there were 22 trading days. 18 of those days were both, when you get into real data, were both negative for stocks and bonds. They moved in the same direction 18 times. And actually, I'm sorry, were negative 12 times. So what does it tell you? That being in a balanced account was really very successful. You lost a lot more than the S&P 500. You lost a lot more than the Magnificent Seven. That's really important because the bond market, while flat for the first quarter, basically down was flat. You didn't get hurt by it. And I think sometimes we get so caught up with the S&P 500. That's not the only game in town. Being a diversified portfolio is actually quite beneficial. So being diversified in the first quarter worked out really quite well. And I think that's the theme of the first quarter, that it worked out well. Why did the Mag 7 struggle so much? Well, that's an easy answer. The reason why the Mag 7 struggled so much was simply because valuations. Those stocks are not inexpensive. And when you have expensive stocks, things can go wrong. It's just that simple. While these companies have tremendous revenue, they're the biggest revenue drivers in the S&P 500. Think about Nvidia and Microsoft and all these really incredible names. Their names are trading as the most expensive stocks in the S&P 500. So we've talked to this about my silly cereal box analogy. When you walk into the store, if you're making a lot of money and you're not worried about inflation, you're going to buy the most expensive item on the shelf. By the time when gasoline prices have jumped up 25%, and you might be a little worried about how much you spent on the holidays, or more importantly, you're concerned about the war, your job, whatever. The consumer numbers right now are good, not great. Maybe you're not buying the most expensive item on the shelf. Maybe you're finally worried about its price, and you go down to something that might be on sale. You know what's on sale? Large cap value stocks have a 16 PE ratio versus large cap growth stocks at 24. What does that mean? So the price of the companies divided by how much they earn are much cheaper for traditional value companies than large cap growth stocks, which are the price of the company divided by how much they make every year, are a much higher ratio. Now, traditionally, growth stocks do have a higher ratio. They don't pay a dividend. They have different types of earnings. They tend to be based on their growth potential rather than how much they make every day. But still, that spread's quite wide between 16 and 24. So what does it ultimately mean for you? It means you want to be diversified. And once again, diversified worked quite well. So understanding the recent underperformance of large cap growth is notable, and showing that 9% I mentioned a few minutes, 9 to 13% is real. In the big picture, we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and we have the reality of the AI generation and what it's going to mean. So in the short term, if you own some of those names and you didn't sell any, I wouldn't panic. But for example, I do think it's a good idea if you have some cash to buy some of these really quality names that are on sale. I think that's an excellent idea. And more importantly, I think when you ask yourself, how do you survive in managing money for the long term? It's easy. You buy the dip, you buy when things are cheap, you buy good companies you hold on to for a long time. You add some bonds to dampen your volatility, and you don't, get too aggressive. You don't be so full risk on unless you're willing to suffer the consequences of right now being down 9 to 13% in those handful of stocks. It's really not much harder than that. For all the noise around how hard it is, it's really not much harder than that. As much as we want to believe it's different, that's just not the way it works. I mean, the reality is, I think you have to be accepting of the fact that if you're diversified, you may not hit the highest of highs, but you don't hit the lowest of lows. And I think that's what matters most. Just some data that came out that's really important. We saw the JOLTS survey, the number of open jobs that are out there, fall by 358 million, down to 6.88 million. That's one of the lower numbers of the last 5 years. So a little surprising that we saw that number fall quite a bit. But we saw hiring do quite well. Now, still, it's mostly dominated in healthcare, unfortunately. But U.S. economy added 178,000 jobs in March, far above expectations. That's the strongest number since December of 2024. And in fact, but it does following the revised February number, which was negative 133. There's still some government shutdown noise in all this, by the way. The unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. The number of people looking for jobs hasn't changed a heck of a lot. It's still around 62%, what we call participation rate. But the reality is, when we see the current labor market, it's fine. It's not wonderful. It's kind of a no hire, no fire environment. The quits rate fell below 2 million. Number of people quitting per month. That's a pretty low number. Why is that happening? I think people are worried about finding the next good job, or they're not seeing it out there. So the labor market's healthy enough to keep us going in the right direction. Adding that many jobs is great. Seeing the February recession down is not great. But and seeing the number of jobs available shrink by 358,000, also not great. So when you put some of these together, you ask yourself, is the labor market in the United States healthy, which is clearly the most important thing we keep an eye on, and it is. It's healthy enough to keep us going. By the way, this doesn't mean it's inflationary. One of the things I talk a lot about is, are we going to see inflation because of labor, specifically wages? And what you're seeing is, from a wage standpoint, wages are hanging in there. They're still above the rate of inflation. They did cool a bit. They're roughly around 3.5% to 4%. So not blowing away the rate of inflation, which is arguably 3%, but certainly pretty good. What we saw for the month again was clearly the idea of healthcare leading the way. So, for example, when you look at the monthly payroll, 75,000 of them went to healthcare. Another 50,000 went to leisure and health hospitality. That's 125. The construction, transportation, manufacturing, social assistance rounded out. The big loss, federal government, continuing to lose people in the federal government. So when I look at the data, to me, it seems like it's good enough to keep the U.S. economy going. I keep a close eye on something, the participation rate for people between the age of 25 to 54. It's no longer at an all-time high, but it's still high enough to be relevant. I think it matters enough that we'll look at that number and be happy that it's north of 53, but not through 54. In other words, I'm sorry, 84. I'm getting my numbers wrong. The participation rate between the age of 25 and 54 is 83. It could be 84, which would be much higher, which would be through an all-time record. Just something to think about there. Just I points about the labor market. Anyway, the labor market's healthy enough to keep us going. I don't think it's amazing, but it is good enough. A couple of things that came out last week. ISM manufacturing. It's a big data point. ISM manufacturing continues to be in expansionary territory. We saw it come in at 52.7. That's 3 months in a row of ISM manufacturing being above 50. Above 50 means expansion. So it tells me that there might just be some sort of a renaissance happening in the manufacturing sector. Is it profound enough to change the course of U.S. Economics? Not yet, but we're getting in that direction. The federal government thinks we're going to, the president and the administration thinks we're going to grow at around 3.1 to 3.5% this year, whereas the Congressional Budget Office thinks it's more like 2.5%. Why that's so relevant? If we could grow above 3%, then clearly what happens? It's kind of cool. Our annual budget deficit becomes much less so. Doesn't get eliminated, but it would shrink quite a bit. Now, will it happen? If there's a manufacturing renaissance where we keep adding jobs and pushing wages higher, keeping inflation in check, yeah, it could happen. But is it going to happen? It's hard to say. The war with Iran has created an issue. The war with Iran clearly suggests that right now we have very high gas prices. Now, this isn't the highest we've ever been. This isn't not much higher than we were a couple of years ago. But the reversal from very low prices to very high prices is painful to the U.S. consumer. Luckily, this is not driving season. Luckily enough, this is not home heating or home cooling season. Although right now in New Jersey, it's only about 45 degrees outside. And we're going back below freezing last night. My heat was on again last night. We're getting another cold spell. Hard to believe. Tomorrow, we don't get above 40 for the whole damn day. Excuse me, whole darn day. Anyway, we're not generally heating or cooling right now. So that is beneficial to the U.S. consumer. But I do think it's quite fascinating that when we're going to keep a close eye on, all things related to the consumer, all things related to the labor market, and there's no doubt that higher gasoline prices is going to hurt a bit. But the manufacturing sector seems to be maybe turning the corner, which I think would be very, very powerful. If that happens with a low unemployment rate, we'd get higher wages, we get a stronger U.S. economy, but it probably does mean stubbornly high inflation of around 3%. Put it all together, what's it get? Normal. Nothing wrong with a normal economy. We don't have to grow at 30% in the stock market because the government's printing money. We don't have to grow at 4 or 5% because we're coming out of a pandemic. We don't have to be adding hundreds of thousands of jobs every month. Normal means we're not affecting the labor market one way or the other too greatly. And at the same token, we're looking at what's happening out there and we're suggesting that maybe there's a renaissance in manufacturing. It's starting to develop. We got to get ISM services that came out on Friday, and I don't have the official data yet, but it looked like it was in contraction. That's a bad thing. 70% of the U.S. economy is based on the service sector. And for one of the first prints in a while that the service sector might have gone into contraction for the month was damaging. We haven't seen the final data yet. We'll get more data today. But certainly that's just something to be concerned about. It's never a clear picture, by the way. It's never gonna. I'd be shocked if I ever get on this podcast and go, "Oh my God, things are so great. Let's just go gangbusters into the markets because things can't be much better." Yeah, that's not how it works. There's always something to worry about, or put differently, there's always something to take advantage of, and that's how I would look at it. To me, there's always some way you could take advantage of what's happening in the market. To me, that's much, much, much more powerful to the overall grand scheme of things. And if you do that, then you got a better chance of buying at the lows, holding good stocks for a long time, staying invested, not panicking when markets get volatile. All those basic things we talk a whole heck of a lot about. And why are they so relevant? They're relevant because in the end, it's panic that affects people's performance. When you don't panic, you will have success. When you do panic, you won't. One of the headline I saw, which is really pretty powerful, is the number of millionaires in the country keeps going higher. And just recently, the most recent poll shows that when you think about what's happening in the middle class of the United States, right now, only about 20% are poor or near poor. There's about another 25% that are lower middle class. But the bulk today, call it just about almost 40% are what we call the core middle class, and then the upper middle class continues to grow. So if you look at this in 1980, just use upper middle class. Of the entire U.S. population, 10% were in the upper middle class. When you look at it today, it's almost 30%. Core middle class, which represented it's about the same number actually. It's actually about 35% was in the core middle class. That number is actually shrank because more people are in the upper middle class now. It's still about 30%, so it hasn't shrank a lot. What shrank the most is the poor. The poor used to represent 25% of American households. Now it's about 23%. The lower middle class used to represent about 27%. Now it's less. It's only about 20%. So people are moving upscale. Why? 401k, your house being worth more. And don't get me wrong, the rich, the top, call it 1%, have something like 40% of American assets. It's quite incredible. So there is this K-shaped world we live in. But when you think about the comparisons, we're better off today than where we were a long time ago. Income-wise, upper income in 2022 is 256,000. In 1970 was 144. Middle income, 106,000 today, used to be 66,000 in 1970. That's not a big change. I would think that would have been more than a double, but it's something. Where the lower income folks got to still catch up, and it's up 55% since 1970. 1970, a lower income person made 22 grand a year. Now they make 35. That number continues to push higher. That is obviously the very first rung of the workforce, with the average income in the United States closing in on 80 grand a year. But certainly when you look at the upper income, they're up 78% increase year over year change since 1970 versus the bottom at 55. That's kind of the fuel behind it. Just something to note. Yeah, at some point, I think all this money that the boomers have will go from one generation to the next. But until that time, there's going to be some yelling and screaming about unaffordability of houses and the fact that there are the folks at the top are spending all the money to keep the economy going. The top 20% represent 80% of the spending in the United States, discretionary spending especially. So one other fun tidbit I picked up this weekend, which I think I can't help but mention, who's the winner in the Iran war? And you notice I haven't talked a lot about it. There's just still too many unknowns. There's still too much we don't know. It seems like there's a chance at a 45-day ceasefire. That would be wonderful for markets, obviously for the people that live there. Would we get regime change in that scenario? I'm not so sure. I mean, the details are pretty thin so far. We're not getting a lot of information. However, when you think about the winners and losers of this war, well, the United States is a winner here because if you look at the natural gas exportation just to Europe, and you did it from 2021 to now, in 2021 we said 20% of their gas came from the United States. Today it's over 75. So when you think about where it's coming from, the United States is the one selling a lot of natural gas to Europe. Why? Well, that's easy. Because they needed Norway and us basically make up almost all of the gas that Europe gets. China's to Russia some, but not much anymore. Who are the net oil and LNG as a share of their GDP biggest importers? South Korea, number one. But if you go down the list, it's all the companies, Germany, Italy, France, India, Japan. So who are the wins of this? The energy producers. Who are the energy producers? Well, we are one of them, everybody. There's no doubt about it. We are definitely one of them. So what does it mean for all of us? Well, it means that at the end of the day, you're energy independent. What was Venezuela an accident? Well, all that Venezuelan oil is being sent to the United States today. So that says something about where we are from the war standpoint. And I think for the people of Venezuela, you look at the immigrants that have come across the board without proper documentation or illegals. A lot of them were from Venezuela. It's a terrible place to be where women have been abused and and treated extremely badly for decades. Maybe a chance to turn around from a humanitarian standpoint. Will the government ever be pro its own people? I don't know. We'll see. When I see it, I believe it. Well, can that happen in Iran? Well, I hope so. I mean, the 90 million people, give or take, that certainly will seem to want regime change, and they've been oppressed for so long. Currency down 99% from its peak. Some good resolution would be amazing. I thought about this on my own over the weekend. I couldn't find. I was trying to read about it, and now in hindsight, being removed from it, oh gosh, I guess it's 20 plus years, 21, 22 years. Is Afghanistan a win? Would you call Iraq a win? Especially Iraq. Now, those wins, is Iraq a now pro-Western country or less non-American, what's the right word? Less anti-American than what it was under Saddam Hussein? I don't know that, but it seems like it is. You notice we don't hear a lot about Iraq these days. We don't hear about bombings. We don't hear about killings. It seems like the country's on some sort of path to normalcy without knowing more. I don't want to give you false hope here, but what if Iran becomes that in 15 years or 20 years? I mean, wouldn't that be a long-term win? It's hard to say. Long way away from there today. Today, we're still got dropping bombs and losing military folks, and people on both sides dying. Well, less so on the United States side, thank God, but Israel certainly, and the Iranians certainly. So I'm not going to get into it because right now it's geopolitical, and geopolitical headlines can sway the market one way or another. Today's a good example. We had a great jobs report on Friday, and yet the market's basically flat today, waiting for the latest from President Trump, I believe. And he is speaking now. And whether or not they can come to a ceasefire or a truce, that would be wonderful. Hopefully, we don't go this far and get nothing out of it, where the same regime stays in power. Well, that would be pretty silly. But let's hope that's not the case. All right, just two more fun things. I'll let you go on because I'm yammering along here. First of all, my shout out of the week. Before I get the shout out of the week, there's an article in the Weekend Wall Street Journal that I just find hilarious, and I got to mention it. It's personal. I can't help myself. The title is "The Tyranny of the Aura Ring," and that people are so obsessed with the data stream they get from the Aura Ring, they spend their lives watching it every single minute of the day when they get up, when they go to sleep, during the day. And I get we all want to be healthy. I understand that. But do you think anybody in Sardinia who lives over 100 is wearing an Aura ring? You think anybody in those other blue zones around the world is wearing an Aura ring? No, they walk, they eat well, they don't overeat, they eat a very diverse diet, a Mediterranean style diet that makes them healthy. And I get it. I'm the first one to say, as an older guy, I'm 58, when my dad died a couple of years back now, I struggled to sleep for a while. I'm always a pretty high energy guy. But it took me a long time, and at times I'll develop some migraines here and there from not sleeping properly, and I'm working on that. I'm trying to do some things where I'm learning to be better at nighttime, try to get my rhythm in line, and it is working. It's amazing how if you just listen to people who know what they're talking about, you can grow, you can be better. And I get it. Having the data from a ring like that makes sense. But when I hear all these people, whether it's their Apple Watch or their Aura Ring or their mattress topper or on and on and on, their Fitbit, and they just spend their days monitoring their health. I don't know. It just seems like too much information. In the world of too much information, when do we ever just disconnect and have fun? And I'm even accused of that I don't disconnect enough, that I don't take the time to disconnect enough. And I disconnect in different ways for me personally, but I do think that the Aura Ring story is quite hilarious. Forgive me. All right, my shout outs of the week. This is easy. The astronauts above that amazing Artemis 2. And the comments they made, the one black gentleman, I don't know if he's African American, and that he talked about his race, unfortunately, being relevant. I thought there were incredible comments about how at the end of the day, sure, he was happy that he's on the mission, and he's certainly excited to be there. But no doubt that Victor Glover, that he's, I think, somewhat sad to have to talk about his race. That sure, for today, for brown and black children to see him is a wonderful, amazing thing. But he looked forward to the day when it's no longer a thing. Me too. Wouldn't it be great if somebody would stop talking about this? Why do we still see color? I don't get that. I just don't understand it. But anyway, I get a kick out of Christina Koch, whose hair always looks like Medusa, with it all going in different directions. And today they're going around the moon, going further than any human's ever gone before. So kudos to the astronauts that are up there, out there in the middle of nowhere, leaving their families behind. Their comments about Easter I thought were amazing. The pictures coming back about the moon, Jeremy Hansen and Reed Weissman, the other two folks that are on the little rocket. I looked at it. Oh my God, I got a panic attack. To be in that little capsule, I'm a little claustrophobic. I don't love being in tight spaces like that. To be in that little thing for 10 days, oh man, God bless them. Those people got some real courage. And some of the things about this rocket are amazing when you think about the boosters and how big they are, the storage tank, the toilet that doesn't work. And there they are zooming around the moon. Now, here's a fun one. If I could all speak to you live, how many would you think that we actually landed on the moon already? Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy, but I got to tell you, if it's been this hard for us to get back and this much money and this much time, 50 years later, you're telling me we once landed on it, jumped around on it, got back on it, and made it our way back home? I don't know. That just seems like it seems like a long shot to believe we actually landed there. But I'm gonna hope someday we do land there and they find the flag and they can take a picture so they prove they did. Let's assume they did. But anyway, my shout out of the week goes to the astronauts out there, millions of miles away, wherever they are. And I just think it's so cool. Such an amazing time. In the middle of a war, couple of wars raging, people upset. You watch Instagram, we watch X, or you look at Facebook, some of the stuff that's out there. My God, people are so angry. Jeez, take it easy. It's Easter, it's Passover, whatever you celebrate. Maybe Ramadan for those who just got through it. Maybe we could just take a chill for once. Hopefully this war comes to an end. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But in any event, my hope is that you had a wonderful weekend. I'll be down to see the girls in Georgia in a couple of weeks. I get that question a lot. But for now, hope you had a great week, everybody. Thank you very much for listening in. Take care. I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye.